Off we go. I will introduce myself, even though you know me. I'm Jim Gustafson, professor of psychiatry at the University of Wisconsin Medical School, giving my third YouTube lecture out of a series of 36 lectures every Friday, posted mid-afternoon every Friday. This lecture is called Insight Works by Lines of Sight. Insight is a very interesting word in the English language. It originated about 1200 and it's since shaded into its present meaning by about 1580, and it means penetrating understanding into character or nature. Today I'm going to explain how insight-oriented psychotherapy works in terms of the current neurobiology of Karl Pribram and David Bohm, called the holonomic brain. I will proceed in three parts. The first part will be a very simple explanation of holonomic theory. The second part will be the lines of sight that I derived from that conception. And the third will be a case illustrating how to use the lines of sight. The holonomic brain. This theory says that all of the senses enter the body as holograms. I bet you didn't know that. And are brought into focus by a kind of lens. Subsequently, the image is sent upstream into the brain as a hologram. So you have hologram, lens, focus, hologram into memory. The retrieval of memory is simply a reversal from hologram to space-time, triggered by movements of the eyes or head. As Pribram explains further, the movements can be as tiny as the nystagmoid movements of the eye, which are almost continuous. And of course, in REM sleep, that happens again. Or by movements of the whole head. Lines of sight. In other words, movements of the eyes or head from tiny to large select specific lines of sight. And these are what selects what you can see. According to the Lotka scenario from biology, and you can have a look at that cartoonish diagram, that's a hole in the ground on the left. That's a little animal coming out of it to forage, heading along the first line of sight 1. That's a red-tailed hawk saying, I'm about to have my supper. And that's the little animal saying, I'm about not to be your supper. I'm going back to my burrow. So one line of sight sees how our foraging takes us within range of predators and risk of capture by them. A second line of sight sees our reversal of this potential capture, stepping back from it and sighting how to get back to our burrows before the predator gets there. Psychotherapy via lines of sight, a single example. What is wrong with our patients is that they have lost sight of this beautiful transitional capacity for reversal, to go forward and to go backward when necessary, that has selected human beings for the last 2 million years of the Ice Age. I call this capacity the transitional operator. In the last 5,000 years, human beings have been selected to be what I call constant operators, which is to repeat themselves, which is to go forward, 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 forward. In this mega machine that we all work for. They and we become clerks of something, whether we're doctors, lawyers, or secretarial staff. What happens to our typical patient? Robert Louis Stevenson pictured what happens over 100 years ago. Dr. Jekyll gives and gives and gives, his constant operator, all day long and into the evening. In terms of the Lotka scenario that you were just looking at, he or she becomes a prey and captive of his own patients at their service. This ceaseless round of being taken captive builds up more and more helpless rage until he or she breaks out of his own back gate at midnight as Mr. Hyde, boom, trampling over everything and everyone in his path. The prey animal has become the predatory animal on his shadow side or her shadow side. Of course, his or her shadow is almost always dissociated. The shadow is not in the conscious compartment, but in the unconscious compartment. For most people, there is no such thing as an unconscious compartment. Secretly and silently, it pours its tremendous disturbances into every subsystem of the body. Ironically, and here we come to our concluding few minutes of the lecture, this typical patient of ours, practically speaking, nearly every patient, and every doctor for that matter, is very simply addressed by the direction of his or her eyes. If I ask her or him his or her biggest concern, what does it say? The person says it's being irritable. I ask for an example. Now I can watch the patient literally stare along a line of sight into a world of being taken advantage of, going, giving, with very little back. Now I say to this person, I bet you know your way out of it. And the patient will change their line of sight simply by my saying that. And they'll look in a different direction. I do this every case in the clinic, every 5 minutes. This is what I'm doing. You always wondered what I was doing. Now I will ask him or her what he or she is looking at. I mean, the patients literally understand that when you say, what are you looking at, that they are literally looking at it. And that looking at something is thinking about it, and looking at it is being in the world of that. Now he or she, looking in a different direction, will be a different person and will say something very surprising or fresh, like, I don't have to do all this work. And they'll often shrug, which I think is a very beautiful gesture. In other words, the patients already have in them the lines of sight necessary to see how they get themselves into captivity, that's the first one, and out of captivity, that's the second. Only they do not know that they know until I elicit it from them and show them that they already know. They do not need to be taught by cognitive behavior therapy from the outside because the necessary knowledge is already in them. Finally, I usually say to the person, oh, that lift of your shoulders is the most hopeful sign I've seen all morning. We did that this morning. You do not have to carry all that weight around. Of course, this is but a first step. But re-entered over and over again, this working through selects a beautiful, transitional, and great instrument of orientation.